Welcome to Finding Words in Hard Times, the podcast, where we provide stories and tools to help you be more comfortable as you help others in hard times. I'm John Swanson, teacher, writer, hospital chaplain, and host of this podcast. In these first few episodes of the podcast, we're going to be finding our voice, which is what always happens when we start talking to people in difficult times. We're looking to find our voice. We're looking to find what works, find what's helpful, and we're looking to try things and listen to um, what's going on in the lives of the people that we're talking to. So during these first few episodes, that's the feeling that we're going to have. We're going to start uh, in these first few episodes by talking about my book. And more accurately, in this episode, I want to talk about the title of my book. It's This is Hard, What I Say When Loved Ones Die. I used to say, I'm sorry for your loss. And it was a good thing to say, and I used to teach about it all the time, and I'd say this, I'm sorry for your loss, and then shut up, right? So that there is that statement, and then there's the space in there. And sometime, and I wish I could figure out when it was, I stopped saying that as much, and I started more often saying, this is hard. I wish I could say, oh, this was the moment. But what happened for some reason is it started to make more sense to say, this is hard, and then to stop talking. It recognized that what just happened, what was going on, was hard. And we needed to know that. Now, for context, when I most often say it, apart from just saying it in normal conversation, when I most often say it is when I do what we do as hospital chaplains at the place that I work. We are the ones who talk to every family that loses a loved one. We're the ones that, for example, are what funeral home are you going to use? But we also are a little more compassionate than that. We're trying to help people in these moments, have somebody to talk to have somebody listen to them, and to have somebody know how to take this next breath, these next couple of steps. So in that context, I had a number of conversations with people, and I realized that I was often saying similar things. And it was some point in that process that I realized that often I was saying, this is hard. And then in 2022, I did a research project, and the thing that I asked in the research project is for people to talk about what they wish someone had said or done or given them in those minutes, hours, days after a loss. And one of the themes that came out in that research project was a theme that I called validation. People needed other people to acknowledge that someone had died. They needed people to acknowledge that this is hard. And so it, for me, said, oh, this idea of acknowledging the hardness of this moment is a pretty significant thing. It's a thing that at least some people want to have happen. Because here's the truth. Comparative hard, that's not that helpful. Oftentimes we fall into the other people have it worse than me, blah, 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 all those kinds of things. And that actually isn't a very helpful thing. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and this person was talking about the difficulties that they were going through and complexity, and there was a lot of complexity there. And she said, but I keep telling myself that other people have it worse than me. And I just laughed, not at her, but we had built enough rapport that I could do that. And I laughed and I said, do you understand that you are the it could be worse for other people? So in other words, figuring out where we are on this sliding scale of worstness is not a helpful process to enter into. Instead, I I think that being able to stop and acknowledge that this thing that I am in is hard. Doesn't mean it's impossible. Doesn't mean that we're not going to be able to figure out how to take the next breath and the next step, but this is hard. And I think that that's one of the reasons why when we say, I'm sorry for your loss, it's less helpful than it could be. I think that when we say that, we're kind of forcing conversation, right? So when we say, oh, I'm so sorry, the person says, why are you sorry? Because you didn't do this. This is not your fault. And for some people, where their thinking goes is, well, but this is my fault. If I would have done whatever. So, in other words, by introducing this idea of sorriness, it may or may not be a helpful thing for them, and it may or may not calm them, quiet their heart in the moment. It may actually stir up frustration and whatever. Instead, when we say this is hard and we stop, we're allowing a person to feel their feelings. We're allowing them to be present in this moment, to have to not do anything, to have to not engage anything. We are acknowledging that at this moment, this is hard. And what's interesting is that when I say that, when I'm with a family, when we're in conversation, when I look at them and I say, after we've talked to them, I look at them and I say, this is hard. Sometimes people say, thank you. Because finally somebody had recognized that this moment that other people have been trying to get them to move through, this is real and this is hard. Other times people have said, it is, and have agreed with me. Sometimes people sit quietly with tears when we have those conversations. And as I think about it, the goal of conversation in these moments is not to get to somewhere next, right? So when you're with somebody and it's your first conversation or your 17th conversation after somebody in their life has died, the goal is not to get them somewhere next and not to get you somewhere next. The goal is to be here now. And this is hard is a way to get to here now. Now, there are ways that we can say it differently, of course. We can say, this is hard. So this thing that we're going through is hard. So whether it's a death, whether it's a horrible diagnosis, whether it's to say this thing is hard. We can say this is hard. So to acknowledge that this thing that we're going through, it is hard, not easy, it's not quick, it's not painless. This is hard. And that helps to emphasize less the incident and more the process. Right. So we're wanting to acknowledge that an incident is difficult. We're also wanting to acknowledge that a process is difficult. And you can also say this is hard, which is like acknowledging deep pain and grief and frustration and anger and fear and all of those things. All of this stuff that we're doing, this is hard. I think that we're so trained to focus on getting through, getting on. We're so trained to focus on being tough. We're so focused on being strong for those who are around. We're so focused on all of those things that we're not equipped to stop and to agree between us that this is hard. maybe we will be able to move on. But right now, at this moment, it's worth acknowledging that honesty is important. And in this moment, it's worth acknowledging that this is hard. What's down here is my tea. Because as I was thinking about this project, as I was thinking about talking with you about the ideas that are in this book, the ideas that come out of my experience, my ideas that come out of conversations with you, I realized that I want it to be more like us sitting together, drinking coffee or tea, and leaving some of those spaces. I have a feeling that as I do this, it's going to be less slow talk and less sad talk than sometimes podcasts are. One of my favorite podcasts about grief was between Clarissa Mall and I'm blanking on his the co-host's name right now, but both of them had lost their spouses. In one in a very gradual battle with cancer, and the other in a very sudden fall off from a cliff. But as they were talking, there was less of that soft conversation and more of the just talking, right? Of the just interacting. And I think that as I'm finding a voice for this conversation, or these conversations, that's the feel that I want to have is the two of us talking as we would if we were in a hospital right now. The two of us talking as if we were in a coffee shop right now. The two of us talking as if we were sitting in Nancy and my living room and having a conversation about really hard things, but actually having conversation. So that's going to be my goal. Now, a reminder that if you don't already know, early in 2023, I started a newsletter called Finding Words in Hard Times. I did it at Substack. So it's called thisishard.substack.com. If you want more resources, more sense of conversation of what I've got in relation to figuring out how to find hard words in difficult situations, take a look at thisishard.substack.com. If you've got questions for me that you want me to include in this podcast, you can write to me at jnswanson@socialmediachaplain.com. And I'll make sure that links to both of those are in the notes for this podcast. I'm grateful for you taking the time to join me in this, to listen and think through and talk through these difficult times. Because the reason you're doing it is because you're committed to wanting to help people. And to be honest, part of your reason for doing it, and oftentimes part of the reason for wanting to be a helper, is because of difficult times that you've walked through too. So I'm hopeful that as we're spending this time together, that you will find opportunity to find some help and encouragement yourself, and some ways to be helpful to other people. So make sure that you take a look at the show notes, and thank you for being a helper. And thanks for listening to Finding Words in Hard Times, the podcast. I'm John. See you next time.